Hi, I'm Lee. Welcome to Art of Light Images. I've been working as a professional photographer for over 5 years, and prior to that I've been involved with astrophotography for almost 20 years. Photography for me is a passion, but recently I've taken the next step into videography. I'll be using this channel to discuss a raft of subjects ranging from taking the shot to editing, unboxings, news, reviews and everything in between. So I thought I'd kick off the channel with an overview of my photography bag, or rather, what's in my photography bag. Almost 4 years ago, I was given £150 worth of photography vouchers as a gift from a grateful bride after shooting her wedding. I used the money to buy this. Oh, okay. This whopping bag is the Lowepro Flip Sides 500AW. This bag has been everywhere with me. And believe me, I've taken this beast into some extreme situations. It's endured a ton of abuse, some hideous weather conditions, and more importantly, it's endured me. I'm generally careful with my gear, but not so with my bags. If I need to get something out in a hurry, if I have to drop my bag into a pool of mud to grab a camera to nail a spontaneous shot, then I'll do it. I've done everything but drop kick this bag. But then having said that, that would probably break my ankle. So this bag is advertised as a rucksack, which can flip forwards, rest upon your hip, you unzip it, grab your gear out, zip it up, then swing it back around again. In practice it works quite well as a rucksack, but the other stuff, in all honesty, it's a little too bulky to perform the swing function well. It grabs against my belt, pulls the butt end of my jeans around to the front, and it's not very comfortable. That being said, it's a very hard wearing bag. The stitching has held up very well. It has a waterproof built-in cover underneath, a useful back compartment, large holding bay with sturdy segments, webbing, etc. Right, so I'm not going to spend an age talking about tripods, SD cards, card holders, what computer I use and so on. To be honest, that would take far too long. And I'll be uploading a separate video discussing my peripheral equipment. So I'm going to focus on lenses and camera bodies. Over the years I've used a range of equipment from numerous brands including Canon, Fuji, Nikon and Sony, to name a few. The first camera out of my bag is the Fuji XT1. Right, now I bet quite a few of you will be thinking, what's this guy doing with such an old camera? This camera was released way back in 2014, has the venerable X-Trans 2 sensor, shoots 16 megapixels of resolution and video with very poor autofocus at 1080p. For many people, those specs alone would turn them away from the XT1. I won't waste time going over the specs, that's not what this video is about. But this is a fantastic camera. Firstly, it looks great, and not too dissimilar from the XT2 and XT3. It has a professional magnesium alloy body, is weather sealed, has a beautiful and large viewfinder, and the analog controls are a joy to use. Analog controls are a joy to use. But beyond all of that, the image quality is sublime. I've been fortunate to own some great cameras from the Canon 5D series to the Nikon D850, and I assure you the image quality of the XT1 is right up there with them, even though it's only an APS-C sensor. There's something filmic about the images, the colour, grain. It's not even something that I can put my finger on. I mostly use this camera for street photography. It's small, unobtrusive, doesn't garner much attention and produces those beautiful images. The other thing is it's cheap. This camera and lens cost me approximately £450. Photography can be a high-risk activity. You can be mugged, things can be stolen, so on. This is especially true of street photography, and more so at night. So I've nicknamed this camera the Forlorn Hope, and I have been accosted several times. So the other thing about this camera, being cheap though admittedly stellar, is that you can take it into risky situations where you wouldn't take a more expensive camera, such as taking shots of an angry sea or using it in rainy and misty conditions. It's easier to lose something like this than the A7III. The lens is the Fuji 16-50. It's image stabilised, but sadly it has a plastic mount. In fact, it's a fully plastic lens. But hold your horses, because this, like the camera, is a fantastic lens. I first used a copy of this lens way back in 2015 with my first Fuji camera, the XT10. At that time I was using Canon professionally, and I was stunned at the quality of the bokeh, speed of focusing and overall sharpness of this lens. The lens produces rich vibrant colours, nice contrast, little distortion, and outperformed some of the Canon L glass I was using at the time, to my great consternation. I've owned the Fuji 18-55 f2.8 to f4, and I honestly feel that this lens, the 16-50, is superior with regards to image quality. I know many will disagree, but I can only speak from my own experience. Okay. Okay, so the next camera is my Sony A7 III. I switched to Sony from Nikon about a year ago. It's an interesting story for another video. Suffice to say, I don't regret the switch. The low light performance is fantastic. The autofocus is as good at tracking high-speed cars and aircraft as my old D500. The video autofocus is a real strength. The eye autofocus is a joy to shoot with at a wedding. In fact, I trust the A7 III more than any of my previous cameras from all those other brands to get the job done. I've heard people talk about the menu being overcomplicated, but in all honesty, it's not that bad. In fact, once you've set the customizable buttons how you want them and filled up the favourites menu with your most used options, you really don't have much to worry about. As a low light photographer, I really appreciate the A7 III. This additional grip from small rig is a great investment. It takes what is admittedly a very small camera and brings it up to the mid-size DSLR sort of category. I can easily grip it. There's room for all of my fingers. It provides protection and works well with my Ronin SC gimbal. The lens is the Zeiss 24-70 f4. Again, this choice will surprise many people. It's a lens that has gotten a lot of bad press. It's considered to be by many a soft lens with lots of distortion. However, after parting with my trusty D850 and Sigma 24-105 art lens, I really wanted something small and was prepared to give this lens a try. I know that the Tamron 28-70 f2.8 is the flavour of the month, but I wanted a wider standard lens. I don't like carrying too much gear around and didn't want to buy an additional 24mm lens to swap around as I'm doing my street photography. And to be honest with you, while this is by no means a perfect lens, I've been blown away by it. It's a great performer, nice rich colours, very sharp, right up to the corners, and an f4 in the A7 III is hardly a compromise. When I shoot weddings, I rarely go below f4. For me, a wedding is about telling a story, not some huge portrait shoot. I don't want the bride's mother blurred out of existence as she sits crying with joy in the background. If I need a fast lens, I'll use a prime. Perhaps I just got lucky with this lens, maybe it's Monday's lens, but it works for me. Okay, so my other camera is the one I'm filming on, and that's the Sony A6400. I shoot a lot of air shows, racing events, wildlife. I found that the A6400 works just as well as my old D500 and certainly better than my old and beloved Canon 7D Mark II with regards to autofocus and tracking. The buffer is perhaps its greatest weakness, and the buffer on the D500 simply blows it out of the water in this respect. That said, the A6400 is really a master of all trades. It's a fantastic performer regarding video, incredible autofocus across the board. It's blazingly fast with image quality that rivals the A7 III. In fact, I can hardly tell the files apart. Well, I can't tell the files apart, to be honest. Of course, the APS-C sensor in the A6400 doesn't hold up as well in low light as the sensor in the A7 III, but it still does a fantastic job nevertheless. Again, this is a small camera and I've put it inside a UU rig cage, which makes the A6400 much easier to hold, mount onto a tripod or gimbal, etc. The lens attached is the Sony 18-105 f4. It's not the sharpest tool in the box, especially at 105mm at f4. However, it's a much better walk-around lens than the 16-50 3.5 to 5.6 kit lens, which I got with the camera and which I quickly sold. And it's a fantastic lens, I think, for shooting video. The next lens in my bag is my Zeiss 55 f1.8 prime lens. This is by far the best nifty 50-ish lens I've ever owned, and I've owned a few of them. It's very sharp, insanely sharp in fact. I have to dial down the sharpness sometimes in post. There's something ethereal about this lens. The bokeh is beautiful, creamy, it doesn't distract. It's a small lens, very light, beautifully well built, and a very fast and silent autofocus. Don't let the f1.8 rating fool you. This is a professional lens, and the price tag goes some way to testifying to this fact. If you own Sony and you can afford it, get it, you won't regret it. Okay, so the next lens is my Sony 90mm f2.8 macro. Weirdly enough, I've used this lens for a wide range of subjects, ranging from, of course, macro, but also for high-speed motor racing, aircraft, portraits. It's proven to be one of my most flexible lenses. Though it's a full-frame lens, it works very well on my A6400, which with the crop gives an equivalent of 135mm. It still lets in f2.8 worth of light, but it looks like an f4 with regards to depth of field. Though the bokeh I get from the compression blur at 135mm makes up for that fact. It's sharp, light, well built, and in all honesty, it's one of the best prime lenses I've ever used. Okay, so This next lens is the Sony A7III f 4.5 to 5.6. It's a small and very compact telephoto, which also performs quite well as a macro. Though not a one-to-one macro, it does fill most of the frame in this regard. Again, it's especially useful on my A6400, as with the crop it gives me 105 to 450 millimeters. It's useful for sport, air shows, wildlife. It makes for a great portrait lens. It uses Sony's version of a stepper motor, so it's not the fastest autofocus lock-on, but that being said, it's been plenty fast enough for me. If I need a longer lens, I'll simply rent one. I don't think there's really any need to waste thousands of pounds or dollars on buying large lenses, especially a lens that you'll hardly ever use. It'd be much better to rent one, and I plan to rent a larger lens this year at the Royal International Air Tattoo. Finally, there's my humble little Sigma 30mm f1.4. It's not a lens I use very often, but when I do use it, I'm never disappointed. I did buy this lens for video, but I've hardly ever used it for video. It's an APS-C lens and gives an apparent 45mm of focal length. It's very sharp, renders beautiful bokeh. It's very light. It's not weather sealed, but it has no image, and it has no image stabilization. But more than makes up for that with its really lovely image quality. I have both a venerable GoPro Session and a GoPro 7. The Session is not actually in my bag. I love them both. The Session, like my XT1, is the action camera I'm likely to risk to get the shot. It's built like a tank, works very well, and produces competent 1080p video. The image files for JPEGs are best left alone though. They really are awful. Of course, the GoPro 7 was released more than a year ago and has since been replaced by the GoPro 8, but I don't see any need to upgrade. The 7 has been a great little action camera, which has been great for video really. I don't know what the image stabilization on it is called, but it's fantastic. I use it quite often, especially when I'm cycling to work. So what's missing from my bag? Let's have a look. Yeah, where's the drone? There's no drone here. I stupidly sold my Mavic 2 Zoom some months ago after not using it for almost 5 months, to be fair, though I had a great time flying it around the Nevada desert last year. And it's something I really regret, selling that drone. So yeah, I should have spent more time flying it. I should have just used the thing, yada yada. The problem is flying in the UK is becoming increasingly difficult, with bylaws popping up all over the place. The apparent general public view of drones and drone pilots is often negative, and if truth be told, I allowed some of this prejudice to influence my decision in selling my Mavic as well. So I've decided I was wrong to do that. I'll be buying a new drone in the next few months, maybe a Mavic 2, maybe a Mavic 3, we'll just have to wait and see. Right then, so what else have I got in my bag? There's my DJI Ronin gimbal. If I can get this out. Oh, I don't think I'll be able to. Oh, this is the thing about this bag. It's a little bit difficult to open sometimes. But yes, so there's my Ronin gimbal. I won't take the whole thing out, but that's in the back as well. And I'll be doing a review on that in a few weeks' time. I also use several microphones. The older Rode Video Mic Pro and a Sonic Lav mic, which I'm using now. I've not had a chance to test drive it properly, but I will be doing a review on that in future videos. This is the only problem with this bag. It can be quite difficult to re-zip. So there you go, that's pretty much the meat and potatoes to speak of. I have more gear, especially lighting equipment, most of which does not fit into this bag. And like I said, in future videos, I'll go into that in more depth. I do have a flash gun here and a harness which will hold 2 cameras, and of course I have a blower. So if you'd like to subscribe, that would be great. Obviously this is just my first video, so hopefully they will get better over time. If you have any comments, or if you have any comments especially about future videos and things you'd like me to talk about, then that would also be fantastic. And until next time, thank you for your time, and goodbye.